and welcome to Pretty Gets Gritty. And today I'm Natalie and we're going to be doing a bit of retro Christmas. So, without too much further ado, what are you going to need? Well, first of all you need a surface that you're going to be working onto. So I've got some, before I did some card here, but that could be an MDF tag, it could be that you are going to do a plaque. It could be a canvas, the choice is yours. Okay. And to that I have added some coloured card, some stamping card, and I've got a triple layer die cut that we can use as a feature. And then we've got pattern paper. So very quickly, I'll just give those a quick display. So I have some other people's that I've kind of pulled out for the colours, and then I have some PGG ones too. So first of all, let's say good morning. Say good morning to Mum. Hi Caroline, hi Serena, hi Carol. And let's get started. So, going to start off with my A5 blank, and let's gather up some of these papers from underneath so we don't accidentally get them dirty. Oinky. So, I want to start off by creating a bit of a background, so I'm just going to grab a stamp block and just some texture stamps. So these could be any kind of background texture. Let's start off with that one. And this is just going to get some base colour onto our blank. Now if you want to just use a kind of really subtle background, then you could apply paper over the top and that's fine. But for this first layer, I'm just going to go and stamp. And good morning B, who's watching on the group. So I can see most comments, so if you do have any questions at any point about what I'm using, don't be afraid to ask. And I'm going to go for, let's have a quick change of colour. I'm going to bring in some crackling campfire, so that's going to go with our checked paper. And I'm using the oxide for this first bit. And I'm just going to give my stamp a very quick spritz with water. And let's just, with no pressure at all, go over our background. And we can get quite a few impressions. Once we start to get a bit further down, then we can kind of start pushing a bit. Okay, first stamp done. Now, I'm going to go for a circular stamp because I want to kind of have the feel lots of baubles for this one. And I'm going to swap to Rustic Wilderness. So my colour theme today is going to be like sandy yellows, warm reds and kind of festive greens. So you want to apply this where you have kind of the paler stamped images, so that we're not trying to have things layer up too much. And we can rotate our circle if we want to, so we can pick some of the ink up from the places that we haven't stamped yet. A little bit there, and just to balance out, I'm going to go pale up this top section here. Okay, so we've got our background. So, have you got exciting plans for the weekend? are you going to be starting on your Christmas cards? Perhaps you're already done. Okay, so I've got some craft card and I want to create like a strip. But I do have a little bit of an issue. So if I put my card on here, you can see it's not quite long enough. It's also a bit boring having this kind of strip, and it's going to cover up most of my background. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to tear it straight down the middle. Okay, we can then join it up like that if we want to, or if it's a bit wide we can just trim it off. So I'm going to probably finish up with something that's more that width. So let's just tear this edge. Yep, upcycling is the way to go, B. So if you're house clearing, you never know what you might find. So let's get a trimmer. Any trimmer. Okay. And because it's not quite long enough, I just need to put a break in somewhere that we can always hide at a later point. So I'm going to line up the bottom edge on the grid of my cutter, just so that I know I'm square. Press and hold and just chop. Nothing that mathematical about it, it's just about putting it somewhere where we can kind of conceal that join. So I'm going to go kind of there-ish. And you can either use some gel medium or you can use some glue. Let's go gel. Okay. Just going to grab a lip brush. Now, you need to decide which bit tearing you want to have kind of feature. So one side of your craft card is probably going to be nice and smooth, the other side is going to be a bit rough. So decide whether you want the rough side or the smooth side and glue the opposite. Preferably without gluing your fingernail. It's going to be one of those days today. Oh well. I'll have nice shiny nails later. So, with that glued, I just want to make sure I line that up to the top of my board so I get a nice neat finish. If it's not quite right, I'm just going to put a bit more, just because I want to make sure I get it right on that edge. Otherwise it can look a bit weird if there's like a bit of a white line, especially if it's an uneven one. So I'm just going to put that just there. Now if you've got a nice weight that you can put on top just to stop it curling up. Oh, a rusty old lamp, we've got to see what you do with that, B. That'd be fantastic as a project. Okay, so glue this side. Try and keep it so that you've got both of them the right way around, if that makes sense. If you kind of got one going one way and one going the other, it won't look like it's a consistent strip. It's all about tricking the eye. Okay, just want to get a little bit on this top corner. And hi Carol, hope you're okay. So again, line up from the bottom and then we can just move that up. Okay, so because we've got a bit of a mismatch just here, what I might do is just do another little bit just to kind of bridge the gap. So let's just tear a fraction and try and get it the same way around. So I'm just going to tear this the opposite direction. So whichever bit you kind of lift up towards you is going to give you the rough bit, the other side. So that's about right just there. Maybe a little long, so I'm just going to tear it rather than cutting it so that we don't get a harsh line. Okay. Just want to place that so that our line kind of pulls back in like so. And then my bauble's going to be going over this section here. So what we can do is we can place that now, or we can wait for a bit. So just so that we know where we're going, I'm just going to show that where it's going to sit. So it's going to be sitting back there. But we want to have some other elements underneath it first. So one way of doing that is that you can put it up on 3D foam and then slide them underneath. But sometimes it can be a bit of a awkward way of doing it because you invariably get the one bit of foam that's just in the wrong place. So sometimes it's just easier to work the other way around. Okay, so I'm going to pop the lid back on my gel medium for a moment. Stick your brush in some water so that it doesn't dry with that gel medium on it. And sometimes it takes a couple of stabs to get it all out. Okay. So you don't want to leave your brushes in water for any longer than you have to. So do take them out and just give them a quick blot and let them air dry. Okay. So for this next bit, let's go to our stamping card. And this is so I can give my stamping a bit of time to dry. Back with the stamp block, and I've pulled out a couple of really non-Christmassy designs because I thought it would be good to see how we can use the stamps that we already have without necessarily being full on Christmas. So my thought was that I could do some texture with the text in the background and stamp over the top. So if I go too far, just make sure that your stamp block is dry, because there's a little bit of water on there from where we did our inking before. So pop that on. Now I'm going to go to, got two choices, we can go antique linen or we can go scattered straw. So I think for this first one I'm going to go scattered straw. Because we're going to be watercolouring over the top. And I'm just taking some of that text. So a bit more there, a bit more there, a bit there, a bit at the top. There we go. So that's our first layer of stamping done. So for this next bit of stamping, I'm going to swap inks and I'm going to a Memento ink pad instead. So the reason being that I want something that can take a little bit of water. No more watercolouring. And I'm going to take a couple of the flower designs. And I'm just going to try and nest that as best as possible so that it's going to fit onto our card. So let's do that one there. And we've got another rose here, so we'll go and stick that one there. So that's doing pretty well. Now let's ink that up. Hi Jay. hope the pears are lovely and sweet. Okay. Supposed to be making a couple of cards but no motivation. Sometimes we just need to kind of chill and do something else just to get the old brain cells going so that we're feeling a bit more creative. I think it tends to kind of go away from us if we're stuck thinking, oh, I've got this to do, I've got that to do. Trust me, I have a to-do list as long as me are. But I have to just not pay too much attention to it and just kind of go with the flow. Otherwise I'd never get anything done. Okay, so I'm just going to pop those back off there for a second. Okay. So I'm going to set that to one side and just allow that all to dry, otherwise they could bleed a little bit. Have you seen the latest list of postal strikes? Yes, I have. I'm regularly sending stuff in the post for samples and things, so it's like, no, just no. As I said, long to-do list, and yeah, Raw Mail's not helping me. So, I'm going to bring in some colour card. And if you wanted to, we could go back to the butterfly design. And let's pick out the little butterfly. And I'm going to do a couple of those. Hope you get something sorted about your shoulder, Carol. I have a poorly elbow at the moment and it's driving me insane. So much so, I was filming yesterday and I just had to stop because it's just like, ouch. And it's one of those things that when you hurt something, it's like everything wants to bang into it. So we've got these little number stamps and I'm going to use those. And let's go to, I'm going to go to antique linen. So usually the temptation is because you're on a darker cardstock that you go darker ink, and I'm going to try and go the opposite way. Let's go a bit lighter. Okay, I mean nice and subtle. One more. I'm just going to stagger that too. But I'm terrible for leaning on it and then I know about it. Oh, that's not good, Joan. Okay, so let's go back to our first step. Now that we've done that bit of stamping, I'm going to pick out, let's go for our bigger block. But we're probably not going to use all of it, or if we do, we'll chop it into lots of little bits. So just ink that up, and I'm going to kind of curl it round so we try and pull up as much of that texture as possible. If it doesn't stamp fully, don't worry about it. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that now. I've actually given this enough time to kind of dry, and I'm just going to take my stamp back off my block because then I can use my block as a palette. So, work black over white so that you can see what you're doing. And I'm going to start off with the Crackling Camphor ink. Now if you have a re-inker, you can just put a little drop of that to work from. Or you can just squidge it out a bit of ink. So you don't need a lot of water, and I would advise against using a lot of water if you can help it, because otherwise you can find that your card can start to crinkle. And we're also going to go on the rule of less is more. So don't try and be perfect, be quick, and just kind of flick the colour on is the best way of putting it. And by keeping our inks reasonably dry, it should mean that we can kind of go back over and do our shading pretty quickly. So, okay. So once you've got that colour on, let's just give my palette a quick wipe. And I'm going to go to the Rusty Wilderness. Now this time I'm going to go a little bit more because we've got more leaves to do. So you want to try and push as much liquid out of that brush as possible, so I'm just giving it a little twist and then straight over the top. So you'll notice I'm not even being that fussy about keeping it in the lines because we're going to be fuzzy cutting some of this out. So as long as you've got some colour to most of your elements, we're going to be good to go. Nearly there. Okay. So with our leaves done, scatter straw next. So because the colour's paler, we're going to need to use a little bit more ink. How memento inks and forget to use them. Yep, it's one of those things that you need to have your ink pads to hand, because if you have some that aren't to hand, you'll find that you never use them. So like I have some mini mementos and I'm terrible for not getting them out. And just sticking to the couple that I have in the larger size. So I'm just going to put a bit more of that colour in there. And down here. So you can see I'm really not being too precious. I started with all these little twiddly bits. The chances are you might end up cutting some of them off just to make you fuzzy cutting that a little bit easier. So there's no point kind of spending oodles of time on it. Let's just pick up the rest of that ink and just finish off this little section down here. Okay. Now, for this one, I'm going to need there we go, white pencil. So one of the benefits of working onto a colour cardstock is that we can put in our highlights first by using a coloured pencil. Most of them are wax based, so they'll actually act as a resist too. So do it first, and then when we go over with our watercolour, hopefully it should pop out. You can always go back over with a second coat after painting too, if you need it to pop a little bit more. And you just want to be careful though to avoid going over your stamped image, because obviously being a white pencil, it won't mind taking out your outline for you. Okay. Now a quick clean up. So this time we're going to go back with our crackling camphor ink, and I can put a little bit more on. And I'm also going to do a little bit on this one this time. Just there. Okay. So with the rest of the ink that's still in your palette, we can just go through and just deepen our shading on our original one. So you want to go particularly around the centre of your flowers, so that's going to make your petals kind of have a bit more form. You can also put little dots just on the outside of the petals, and that's going to kind of make them curve. Just going to put a little bit of that red just on the tip of the bud as well. And do the same on this one over here. And a little bit around the base of our flower, and like so. Nice simple watercolour. Okay, so now we need to plan our layout for our different elements. So let's bring in our bauble again, and that's going to be going about there, very roughly. So we have one flower that's quite big that could be coming around here. So you are going to be able to spend much more time fuzzy cutting than what I'm going to be doing live. But the way I would do it is, if you look at your background where we did that first bit of stamping, you can see that there are some elements that are going to be quite obvious that you want to fuzzy cut round. So don't just think, oh, I've got to follow the brown line and just stick to that. And likewise, if your watercolour's gone out the lines, rather than trying to perfect it with your fuzzy cutting, you're going to want to just go around it, so that if I show on here, that green goes slightly off the edge. So I just cut around that. Okay. So there's a dark bit of this stamping here, so very roughly around that. And wherever possible, turn your work, not your scissors. will make it that a little bit quicker, a little bit more accurate. So let's get in that one. Round we go. I'm just going to take that round like that. So you can see really it's kind of making your fussy cutting a lot easier because you've put that texture in the background. Now, if there was a white line between this bit of background stamping and the flower, what I would say is go around inside it and just cut it away. But because it kind of goes up to it, you kind of want to keep it in. So I'm just going to go around the edge there. Around we go. Ooh, 3 points. So, around we go. Where we stop? Nope, no. Okay. So again, just going to follow that text. Around the postmark. And there we go. So that one's going to go there. So now as we start to build these up, we can start to see where we kind of need to build up the colour in the background. Am I weird that I find fuzzy cutting relaxing? No, I think we're all different. I mean, it'd be boring if we're all the same. Personally, usually I would just whack it in the scan and cut. But with something like this where you've got the texture in the background, it's not always going to pick it up. So especially given that text I've done in a paper colour. So, sometimes you just have to do things the old-fashioned way. Okay. Let's just chop that round there. The other thing to bear in mind is that with some of your fussy cutting, so like down this inside edge of your flower here, it's not necessarily going to be seen. So if you know there's a section that isn't going to be seen, just chop it. Okay, just going to tidy up this bottom section. There we go. So I'm going to pop that one kind of underneath there. Now with this one, we've got the text that comes across here. So what I'm thinking is if we did like, and this is going to be tricky because of those butterflies, but I'm just going to tear this across. Like so. So I've got that torn top edge, and I'm also going to tear into it vertically as well. And then you've got a little bit like this, it can be a bit fiddly. But then what I want to do is kind of, let's go into this section here. I'm going to take out that bottom section that didn't stamp quite as much as well, so we can make it look a bit different. And back down there. So we're only going to fuzzy cut on this one bottom edge. If your card's particularly stiff, sometimes it's just easier to just take a lot of that waste away in one go, just so it can get into the so now we can go and just give that a little bit of move around to kind of get it where we want it. So I don't want to cover up that bulb on the background entirely. Let's rotate that one around there. Move that up there, and we want to make sure that we keep this piece so that the straight edge goes on there. So far that's kind of getting where I want it to. But our background is nice and soft, so now as we come forward we want to get more and more saturated, so it's going to give us a sense of depth. Otherwise the temptation can be to go too dark on the background and it's going to kind of be a bit back heavy. So just before I go too far, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to get the backing off on my stamps and just a little bit of the crackling campfire. A little bit of water, and I'm just going to now, just be aware, because we've done that background with Distress Inks, is going to pick up those colours, so you're going to start to see that I'm actually transferring bits of green, but that's okay. There we go. Now, you just want to block that so that we're not spreading the stamped ink too much. So we've got like this nice watery effect in the background, like so. Okay, so with this next big bauble, let's pull out our big pattern. And this is going to be another very quick tip to kind of colour this die cut really quickly without having to go back to a die cutting machine. So you're going to want a pencil. Doesn't have to be a fancy one. I'm just going to draw around my die cut, like so. And then I'm just going to join that with a slight curve, like so. So if I hold that up a bit closer. Now, if you have a nail file to hand, if you cut your paper slightly larger, then when you stick it on, just go around with a nail file, just to kind of polish off the edges. So again, we could use gel medium to stick this on, or any glue where it's going to stop you having crinkles. Okay, make sure you get it the right way around. So I'm just going to give it a little wiggle, and then that will help spread out the glue, like so. So as I said, if you want to, you can just attack it with a nail file once it's dry. Now, I just want to make sure I have a bit of colour up that top, and I think I'm going to go yellow, but instead of trying to cut round or trying to match that curve, I'm just going to take my little bit of plastic just because it's to hand, a little bit of scattered straw, watercolour brush, let's pick up that ink, and I'm just going to trace that round. Now the colour for this first layer is going to be quite soft, a bit more down this side, and a touch on the far side, and that's going to give it kind of a bit of shading. So let's see if I can just get the camera to pick that up. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my little round stamp that we're using to be like a bauble, and I'm going to ink it up with the same scatter straw ink, and this is the benefit of a clear stamp. We can line that up to the curve of the cap of the bauble, and we can just press that down, like so, and then we have a texture, nice and easy. And then with whatever we have left, I'm just going to do a little bit more stamping onto our background. And a little bit more just at the top. There we go. Okay. So I'm just temporarily positioning where my ball is going, just so I can work out where this bottom section needs to go. So that's going to go down, let's say about there. Now what I would say is I'm going to go back to the gel medium for this one, just because the card's a bit thicker. Take your time with the corners so that you make sure you get a good amount of glue on there. And I'm just going to kind of tap my brush onto the detail sections just so there's a little bit of glue there. Okay. Line up that right hand edge first, and there we go. Now press that down. Okay. So our next flower is going to kind of come over that top section there. But what I'm thinking is let's make life a little bit easier so that we can kind of get our positioning a bit better. So I'm just going to cut in here around the flower. Now, there's every chance that we'll end up putting this back in exactly the same place. But it's just so that I can always have the option of adding something else in. So if you've got some embellishments, for instance, or die cuts, then it might be that this is a good opportunity to start adding them in. Okay. And let's put that one just there. So it's going to be right in the middle. Oh, there we go. And then up that side. Like so. Now, before that's dry, I'm just going to pop underneath a little die cut. So I think that's going to go about there. Now, if you decide you want to watercolour this after, that's fine. So that's, just try and make sure that you've got it kind of actually dangling and not an angle, otherwise it looks a bit weird. Next, let's go for, so we could go for some flowers if you wanted to, but I think they're going to just be a bit too big to go for a little one, I suppose. There we go. Need a bit more gel medium on these, just so we make sure that we get a good seal. So that's going to go there. Now before that's set, again, just double check your positioning, just in case you go, okay, let's move that way. Okay. And then we can slide this under and just go, okay, that might just need to move round a fraction, like so. Okay. So, if you have something where you don't want to take it away too much, I'm just going to gently lift it up and slide that glue underneath, like so. Okay. Now with this one, we might go over the top rather than putting it underneath actually. So I'm just going to apply a bit of glue onto this inside edge. Like so. So we can just stick it to the bauble itself. So remember, we've got these two butterflies that we haven't put on yet. And we've still got some other papers to use as well. So let's have a look. We've got a Merry Christmas just in this bottom corner, and I think we can use that. Tear that towards me so that I get my torn edge, and then I'm going to follow the border down. So even if we lose a little bit, that's okay. We can always just pop that back in with a fine liner if we need to. Okay. And back up this way. And we'll just round off that corner. So now we need to decide where we want to put on Merry Christmas. We can put it so that it sits underneath if we want to. It might look quite good just there actually. Because we've got kind of a nice space for it to slot into. Happy Meal, yay! So what exciting things have we all got coming? We're all going to get a chance to play at the weekend. Are you doing any craft fairs? Are you actually selling what you make? Now that they're all kind of starting back to the Christmas rush. Okay, so I'm just going to push that up and tuck that underneath. So the joy of working with paper when we've got a gel medium on it is that it's a little bit more flexible. Okay, so that's going to sit on there. So we've got room to put something else in underneath here. So I'm going to go to my paper. Actually, let's go to this one. So I thought it was quite fun to kind of have a little bit of tiny foliage. So it can be a bit daunting when you've got a 12 by 12 piece of paper like this to go, actually I'm going to cut into it for fuzzy cutting. That's okay. And again, you can have the time that you need to kind of get into all these little leaves. I'm just going to do the major bits. As long as you kind of get the feel, you can take your time. So let's pop that one. So that's going to come out kind of this way. So a little bit of gel medium and just pat that onto the back. And like so. Go careful at this point to not cover up any of your text, just in case. And I'm going to grab another one of those so that we can have like a bit of a block of them. Otherwise it can look a bit weird if you just do one and there's the only one on there. Very quiet today. Well, it could just be that you're all replying and I'm just not seeing replies. Okay. Okay, so this one's going to curl the opposite way. So let's just pop that underneath. And I'm just going to push it up slightly just so that we don't block our text. Now, if you've had any bits of flower where you've cut them off, this can be a good place to put them back in. Or we can go for another die cut. So let's see what we've got. I think another little bauble would be good, but whether I have one that's pre-cut and good to go. And there we go. Just pop the centre out. And I'm going to push this one right underneath. So we're just getting like a tiny bit showing. And just for good measure, I've got a little circle that's obviously come out of one of the other baubles. So I'm just going to use that. Don't waste anything. Okay. So, and again, because I've done it in one place, do it somewhere else so that you kind of keep that. There you go. There we go. Come here. It's fighting back. It doesn't want to come and play. So, little dot, and just going to pop that on up to that top. Okay. Now, before we glue our bauble on, now's your opportunity to go, well, actually, do I need to add any texture? So let's just stick my brush in there for a moment. Just while I put my lid back on. Okay. So let's pull out a stencil, and that's going to kind of pull everything together. Now bear in mind that the texture paste that I'm about to do is going to take a little bit of time to dry. So you want to kind of allow for that. So if this is a last minute project for you, then don't do it. Especially if it's important that it needs to go in the post. So I'm going to get my snowy texture, and I'm not going to do all of it, I'm just going to do little bits. And make sure you go both up and down so that you kind of catch all the edges. If there's ones where you've managed to go just around the edge, just pop a little bit in just to kind of bridge that gap. And there we go. So there's some down there, and it's just, we can pop some down at the opposite corner. Obviously just bear in mind your colouring. And also the fact that you're now going over layers, so it's going to be much more likely to squidge underneath. So good strong pressure. There we go. So not looking too bad. No, but I think with crafting, you've got to enjoy the process. If you're kind of rushing to get as many cards done as possible, you're kind of missing out on the benefit of it. just before I kind of call that a day, let's do a couple of the snowflakes. So this is going to be a bit more hard for you to see, but they are there, honest. It's just obviously we don't want to be putting our centre too much in the other texture base that we've already done. Okay, there we go. So anyway, where it's just gone a little bit out the lines, we can just smooth it off with our fingers. So let's just stick on our final bit and we will be good to go with any final touches. So back to our gel medium. Have you had some fun deliveries, Lynette? So I'm going to use my palette knife for this one. And yes, it's still got some texture paste on it, but that's okay because we don't want it to be perfectly flat anyway. So let's just scrape off what's left on there. There we go. And it's going to squidge down. And there we go. So just make sure that you're kind of getting that bit as straight as possible. Okay, so I think with that I'm nearly happy. Stop trying to put your finger in it. So I just want to pull out a couple of little watercolour brushes. So I'm just going to do a bit of watercolour detail just on those couple of die cuts so they're not quite so white. Benefits of the brushes are that we can get into places nice and quickly. Now, if I was to go and put red on that one, it's going to be too close to the red of the bauble, but this one over here can go red. So I'm just going to put darker colour down the bottom and overlay that dark colour over here and a little bit around that gold. Then we can go to a lighter red and we can blend. So I'm just going literally straight over the top. Like so. Just going to touch around that edge too, so we're not getting any white edges. And we can kind of fill in the gap. So we're going to keep that centre section the lightest, and all we need is a little bit of water, and we can bridge the gap. And it's going to make our bauble look shiny. Now if that looks a touch too pink, which it does, then you can always just add a little bit of yellow in, just to push that back. So straight over the top, then back with the water just to mix, so you don't end up having like little yellow stripes. That will be fun for the customers. Okay. And the DT gets to have fun. So I'm just going to put the darkest colour where that bulb would be in shade. Swap to a slightly lighter green. And down that edge, so we end up having like a little triangle of light. Make sure you get the red out of your brush, because otherwise when you go to touch that green, what you're going to get is mud. I'm going to go over that edge too. And if you want to do this with like a glitter brush, you can do that too. You don't have to just use plain old boiling water. Okay, and with what's left on my brush, I'm just going to go and do this little dot up here, like so. And if you want to, you can just do a little bit onto your flowers, so that you're kind of pulling that colour through. And you can do the same with the red as well. I love watercolouring, that's my relaxing bit to do. I don't find the fussy cutting relaxing so much, but watercolouring I could do all day long. Okay, so just going to dot a tiny bit of red just around the centre of that flower. Again, make sure that you've got all the green out your brush. I'm just going to tap that with some water. It's just going to blend just a little. And we can do the same with this one. There we go. One last little dot to do. And if you want to, with these little dots, what you can do is actually put like the little cabochons over the top, so they're going to be like permanently domed. Just going to go for that darker colour, just to put a bit of shading on, like so. As long as you do it while it's still wet, it's probably just going to blend on its own without too much input from you. So the only thing missing is my butterflies, but given that it's now 12:10, if you don't want to stay and watch for butterflies, I will more than understand. So Serena, it's perfectly fine, and I will see you, if not next week, the week after. Okay, so we're nearly there. I'm going to cut off his little antenna, otherwise I'll be there for ages just trying to get them to be nice and fine. Do-do-do. And get your nails in there, 3D up, give it a waggle, and what I do is I just kind of push them over my fingers so I get like a nice rounded wing, and that can go up there, down there. It's wherever you think it's going to kind of help your design the most. So I think just there will do actually. Keep it simple. And then after this I'm going to be back to filming again, so try and look after this elbow and make sure it can kind of keep going. It can't stop, it's not allowed. I've got too much to do. So there we go, job done. And I hope you've enjoyed that. Take care for now, and I will see you even next week or the week after.